The you don't elect it. You don't see its budget, yet it bends history in silence. It is 1945. The Second World War ends in fire and rubble. Europe is starving, cities lie in ash, and across half the continent, the Red Army plants its flag. America may have the bomb, but it has no eyes in the dark. The OSS, its wartime spy shop, fought clumsily, while Moscow's network ran circles around it. Even London, its ally, kept secrets from Washington. Harry Truman inherits not just the presidency, but a blind spot. And when your enemies know your moves before you make them, survival demands something new. In 1947, a single vague clause buried in law opened a door to limitless power. From that loophole, a shadow empire was born. But here's the truth almost no one remembers. Power means nothing without money. Not money in Congress, not money in banks, money that moves in shadows, laundered through programs, hidden in ruins, funding coups, and buying loyalty. This is the untold story of how finance built an invisible empire, and how that empire still shapes the world today. The war was over, but America's victory felt incomplete. Yes, factories and bombs had crushed the Axis, but in the new standoff with Moscow, Washington was blind. The Soviets knew everything: American troop movements, secret war plans, even debates inside the White House. Meanwhile, U.S. intelligence was falling apart. The OSS had been brave, but amateur. Agents dropped behind enemy lines were quickly captured. Codes cracked, informants unreliable, networks in chaos. And Britain's MI6, far more experienced, but even as an ally, it refused to share its deepest secrets. Truman saw the truth. Without a permanent intelligence service, America would remain powerless in this new shadow war. So in 1947, Congress passed the National Security Act. Hidden inside was a single sentence that changed history: the creation of the CIA. The language was vague: such other functions and duties as directed by the National Security Council. In other words, the CIA could do almost anything, as long as it stayed in the shadows. For the first time, America had a spy agency built not for war, but for peace and for power. Power is useless without fuel. And for the CIA, fuel meant money, vast sums that could never appear under the daylight of Congress. The opportunity came with the Marshall Plan. On the surface, it was the most generous recovery program in history: $13 billion to rebuild Europe, feed the hungry, restore hope. But hidden in the fine print was a secret deal. 5% of those funds, about $685 million, was quietly siphoned into the CIA's hands. It was the perfect cover. Humanitarian aid in public, covert empire building in private. With this hidden cash, the agency bribed politicians, funded labor unions, and took control of newspapers across Europe. Elections shifted, strikes collapsed, propaganda spread, all unseen, all effective. The Marshall Plan rebuilt nations, but it also built something else: the CIA's first black budget. And in Washington, it proved one thing: America's new intelligence empire could move history not just with guns, but with dollars, money without fingerprints. The money was flowing, but cash alone couldn't buy success. In the late 1940s, the CIA was still a rookie facing the masters. The Soviet KGB was decades ahead: ruthless discipline, deep networks, flawless deception. The CIA, by contrast, was inexperienced and fatally penetrated. One mission sent Ukrainian agents parachuting into Soviet territory, but before their plane even left the runway, the KGB already knew every detail. A handler inside the agency had betrayed them. Days later, every agent was captured or killed. Disaster after disaster, collapse after collapse, infiltrations blown, recruits vanished, reports stacked higher and higher with failure. Inside Langley, morale collapsed. Who wanted to join a spy service that couldn't protect its own? An internal report put it bluntly: fatally penetrated. America's image of competence was crumbling. The CIA needed redemption, not in whispers, but in spectacle. It needed one operation so bold, so undeniable, that the world would forget its failures and start to fear its name. CIA's chance for redemption came in the oil fields of Iran. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh had just nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, Britain's crown jewel, its most profitable concession. For London, it was a disaster: billions in oil profits, gone overnight. So Britain turned to Washington, asking the young CIA to do what it could not: remove him. The plan was codenamed Operation Ajax. At its center stood Kermit Roosevelt Jr., grandson of Theodore Roosevelt. Slipping into Tehran with a suitcase full of CIA cash, he set the coup in motion. Politicians were bribed, mobs were hired, Newspapers flooded with stories branding Mossadegh a tyrant. Radio broadcasts urged citizens to rise for the Shah. After days of chaos, tanks rolled into Tehran. Soldiers stormed Mossadegh's home. He fled over a garden wall, but within hours he was captured. The coup was swift, decisive, bloody. In Langley, it was hailed as a masterpiece, the CIA's first true victory, proof of concept. But beneath the triumph, a dangerous precedent was born. Democracy toppled, not for freedom, but for oil. After Iran, the blueprint was clear. Money, propaganda, and a few key allies could topple a government. The 1950s and 60s became a blur of CIA coups. Guatemala, 1954. President Jacobo Arbenz dared to nationalize land owned by the United Fruit Company. The CIA responded with propaganda, a fake rebel army, and pressure on the military. Within weeks, Arbenz was gone. Indonesia. Efforts to destabilize President Sukarno sputtered, but the pattern was set. Cuba, 1961. CIA-trained exiles stormed the beaches at the Bay of Pigs, only to be crushed by Castro in a humiliation that scarred President Kennedy. But failures didn't end the strategy. Chile, 1973. Millions of CIA dollars flowed into strikes, opposition groups, and media outlets to weaken Salvador Allende. Tanks rolled through Santiago. General Pinochet seized power. The lesson was simple. When democracy produced leaders Washington disliked, the CIA could rewrite the script. For enemies, the message was chilling. For allies, reassuring. For the world, destabilizing. Power in the shadows always comes with a price. By the 1960s, the CIA's reach stretched far beyond coups. Inside sealed labs, the agency launched one of its darkest projects, MK Ultra. Under Sidney Gottlieb, unwitting subjects were dosed with LSD. Others endured hypnosis, sensory deprivation, even psychological torture. The dream? Mind control. Manchurian candidates. Killers who could strike on command and forget it by morning. But experiments weren't the only secret. Black budgets demanded dirty money. In Southeast Asia, CIA-backed militias in Laos and Cambodia quietly guarded opium fields. Planes flew weapons in and heroin out. Later, in Central America, cocaine trafficking became another hidden stream. Agency networks looked the other way, so long as profits fueled the fight against communism. Officially, the CIA was defending democracy. Unofficially, it was blurring into the very underworld it claimed to fight. So ask yourself, what happens when the line between spycraft and crime disappears? For the CIA, secrecy became both shield and sword, and morality negotiable. By the 1980s, the CIA's appetite for covert wars collided with a shrinking budget. The solution? Creative and deeply illegal. Iran-Contra. CIA operatives secretly sold missiles and spare parts to Iran, an official enemy, in exchange for hostages. The profits were inflated, laundered through Swiss accounts, and funneled to the Contras, a rebel army in Nicaragua. But weapons weren't the only currency. In Central America, cocaine traffickers moved product north while CIA networks looked the other way. Cash flowed south to buy guns, drugs flowed north to poison U.S. streets. When the scandal broke in 1986, Washington reeled. Hearings, indictments, outrage. Yet the agency seemed untouchable, willing to cross any line. Then came BCCI, the Bank of Crooks and Criminals International. Drug lords, dictators, terrorists, all laundered billions through its shell companies. The CIA used it too, moving covert funds without a trace. By 1991, regulators shut BCCI down, exposing the agency's reliance on dirty money. But scandals couldn't kill it, because a new enemy was rising, one that would give the CIA a second life. The Cold War ended with a strange victory. The red flag came down over the Kremlin. The KGB dissolved, and suddenly, the CIA lost the enemy that had defined its very existence. Budgets shrank. Networks were dismantled. Washington turned inward, to trade, technology, the economy. For a moment, the agency looked obsolete, but in the shadows, a new adversary was rising. From the mountains of Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda spread across the Middle East, Africa, and even the West. The CIA caught whispers, embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania, the attack on the USS Cole, each a warning, each largely ignored. Then came the morning of September 11, 2001. Hijacked planes struck New York and Washington, killing nearly 3,000. In an instant, the CIA was reborn. Black budgets exploded. Counterterrorism units expanded. The agency became the spearhead of America's new war. From rubble and grief, its mission was clear again. Find the enemy, strike first, and never be caught blind. After September 11th, the CIA needed a weapon that could hunt without risking American lives. The answer came from the sky. First the Predator, then the Reaper, unmanned drones armed with Hellfire missiles, machines that could loiter for 24 hours, read a license plate from miles away, and erase a target in seconds. For the agency, it was a revolution, assassination without boots on the ground, a kill list actioned from thousands of miles away. But hardware wasn't enough. The age of terror demanded data. Enter Palantir, a Silicon Valley startup backed by the CIA's own venture arm, InQtel. Its software stitched together everything, phone logs, bank wires, airline records, even live drone feeds, into one living map. Suddenly, analysts could see hidden networks, track money flows, predict attacks before they happened. The battlefield was no longer geography. It was information, and whoever mastered information would control the future. The CIA was no longer just a spy service. It was evolving into something new, an empire built on intelligence, technology, and invisible money. Today, the CIA runs on one of the largest classified budgets in American history. Billions flow into cyber operations, drone warfare, artificial intelligence, global surveillance. Officially, its mission hasn't changed: protect U.S. security. In reality, the agency has become something far larger, a hybrid of spy service, tech lab, and covert army. In Ukraine, CIA support tracks Russian movements and trains operatives. In Asia, attention turns to China, not an ideological rival, but a technological one: hypersonic weapons, quantum encryption, AI-driven surveillance. The Cold War was fought in shadows. The next war may be fought in algorithms, but the paradox remains. To defend democracy, the CIA often acts outside it. Its coups, its experiments, its black budgets, each has left scars that still shape the world. And in today's hyper-connected age, one blind spot, one miscalculation, could ignite chaos on a global scale. The CIA was born in secrecy. It thrived in crisis. It adapted in every era. But one question lingers, unanswered. Who watches the watchers? From ruined cities to drone skies, the CIA has been reshaped by every crisis it faced. It began as a blunt instrument of fear, built on vague laws and secret cash, and learned, painfully and brutally, how to bend history. It toppled governments, built covert empires, experimented on minds, partnered with tech to see the unseen. Sometimes it stopped real threats. Sometimes it created new ones. The pattern never changes. Secrecy breeds power. Power invites temptation. And temptation tests the limits of a democracy. So ask the hard question. When an agency acts for the nation but answers to no one, who defines the nation's interest? Who counts the cost, human, moral, political, of choices made in rooms without windows? The CIA protects in ways the public never sees. That secrecy can save lives, but it can also hide mistakes that unravel trust and fuel revenge. History shows institutions change with the enemies they fight. The CIA survived the Cold War. It remade itself after 9/11. Now it faces a world defined by data, AI, and rivals who never blink. The real test isn't whether it can keep up with technology, but whether a free society can keep up with it. Because in the end, a republic depends not just on strength, but on accountability. An agency in the shadows may be indispensable. But without sunlight, even the most necessary power becomes dangerous. Who watches the watchers? The answer will shape the century to come. If you found this compelling, hit subscribe and join us as we uncover the history written in money, power, and the shadows.